I'm a homecomer. I came home twice. The first time I came home was to do MBA in 1992. The second time I came home, I was confronted in a big way with the challenges in our country. And I came home with my children, and we lived in the UK before that. And when we returned, I was confronted with the challenges in our education system, challenges in our country, and asked myself some big questions around, A, what is the responsibility as a mother who brings her children back to a country that is clearly full of challenges? But what do we do with that information? How do we address that? And we have a story in South Africa, unfortunately, that the answers for our challenges will come from elsewhere. And I don't know how many of you have been in those conversations where we keep hoping that someone else will bring a solution. The only thing that enabled me to stay in the country was when I started to, for myself, reframe the story about South Africa, not as a country that is broken, but as a country that is alive with possibility. Are we all in agreement that our education system is in crisis? Yeah. Now, I'm here today to let you know that the problem might even be bigger than what you know. So every year about 1.1 million children arrive in grade 1. Only 500,000 of those children make it to matric. So 500,000 children become typically grant dependent. We got the statistics this year. We now have more people who are receiving grants than people earning an income. And then the even sadder part of the story is only 200,000 people will leave matric and will become economically sustainable. And it all comes down to their ability to read and write at grade level in grade 3. The first 1,000 days are really, really important. So you hear about ECD all the time. The first 1,000 days is at the end of grade, it's kind of 3 years old. In South Africa, the research shows that at the end of the first 1,000 days, about 70% of children are on track. The thing that we should be worried about in this room is that the research shows that at the end of grade 3, at age 10, 30% of our children are on track. 70% of children are not on track, and that has to do with the quality of our foundational phase teaching. And the reality is that if you're not on track at the end of grade 3, there is no chance that you're going to finish matric well with the foundation skills that will enable you to do well at university. So when NSFAS says that 96% of the money that goes to NSFAS is wasted, it is because of grade 3 literacy. So the reality is, and this is where I get the CEOs all interested, because there's a direct correlation between quality of education. This is 15-year-old education. This is the PISA test that's done internationally. The quality of education, and on the one axis, and the other one is conditional growth, economic growth. So countries that have improved their PISA score have also been able to improve their economic growth sustainably over time. So the question I ask myself, and I have been asking myself for the last 10 years, is what can we, those of us in this room, do to address it? But we don't just need to address it in one school, we need to address it at scale and with a sense of urgency. So we have developed over the last 7 years an innovative, homegrown, transformational leadership development and principal support process. Lots of words. I'm going to unpack some of that a little bit. So far, 607 school principals have benefited because 607 people, like those people in this room, have stepped out of their comfort zone, have used their knowledge and skills that they achieved at places like USB, and have made a massive contribution. So essentially what it is, we've taken the latest thinking about leadership development that says that 70% of what we learn from doing stuff. So 70% of what we learn from leaving our comfort zone, going into a community in our program, stepping into a completely unknown environment. So if there's anybody in this room who think that you know how to turn a school around in Lavender Hill, is there anybody who think they know? Because we're going to sign you up immediately. So this is what we do. We create opportunities for people like Anton and Lawrence and Gerard and Stan to leave their comfortable place and go into an area that they have no knowledge and skills in, or may have some knowledge and skills, but then they're confronted with the enormity of the issue. So if you've done an MBA and you go back to Nedbank as an example, you can only use about 5% of your MBA because Nedbank works. Most of the stuff that you've learned, you're never going to get a chance to implement in Nedbank. But if you go into that school in Delft and Langa and Gugulethu and Khayelitsha, you have virgin territory to implement and apply all you've done. So that's 70%. 20% of this program is about the community, the social learning, the being part of a community of practice, having a learning process facilitator, working with other people who are grappling with the same kind of issues, and then 10% we do formal training. So the process is a very formally designed process. There's a whole theory behind it. We've taken 15 aspects of leadership development and we've woven it into this development process. But I want to give an opportunity for someone who's had a personal experience of doing this. So we've been working very closely with Nedbank over the last 7 years. So far, over the last 11 years, many Nedbank leaders have been involved. Those are the learners that have benefited from it. I'm going to ask Penny, who is a HR manager at Nedbank, and also one of the people who's working firsthand with a principal at the moment, to come and talk about your experience.
So I joined the program in September 2016. And the reason I joined, or I decided to join, because my boss first told me to do it. But then when I sat with the people that were already on the program, I realized that obviously I'm passionate about education. I was born and brought up in Soweto. And I saw this as an opportunity for me to go and give back to the community. That was the first reason I wanted to join. On a day-to-day basis, as an HR person, my job really is to support the business and to support the employees to be the best that they can be in the working environment. So how about I take that and put it in a schooling environment and see how it goes. So I met my principal, Mr. Thabo Ralipata. He's been in the education system for more than 30 years. And from the very beginning, he said to me that, the biggest challenge at the schools right now, yes, it's the infrastructure, it's the fact that kids are underprivileged, child-headed household, drug abuse, etc. But the biggest challenge that we found is that it's in leadership within the schools. He has about 8 heads of department, 2 deputies, and he's the principal. And the schooling system is quite complex. And he said to me, I don't really know how to manage. I don't really know how to lead. I'm not sure if I'm doing the right things. And that's how our partnership started. And that's how we managed our expectations. We went through, obviously, the leadership development courses through the program. But at the end of the day, I can tell you now that the person that he is today is not the same person that was when we joined. He's more confident in terms of how he deals with the teachers and the school governing bodies, because a schooling system is complex. You have a lot of bosses. So for us going through this journey and for him to learn how to lead, how to motivate, and how to look at each and every person and make sure that whatever it is that they do is the best that they could be. It's exactly what happened at the end of the day. There's a lot of initiatives. I just summarized a few there. There's a lot of initiatives that we've done at the school, but it was very important for us to sit and say, okay, the sponsorship will come and the infrastructure will be sorted and all of that, but it's about leadership and it's about how you really bridge that and how as a leader you step up and you show up and you lead the people. I must be honest, for me, this more than anything is about leadership development. And that in turn for me was great because I felt good about myself, that I was doing something. And I also felt that, it was a complex system, and for me to be able to get in there and get results and receiving the feedback from the people saying, we can see a change in your principal, we can see a lot of things happening in the school, we can see a lot of sponsorship is coming. He can do it on his own. He understands the school, he understands where the school is going, and for me that was rewarding. So that's my experience.
Every person in this room potentially could help us fix it. Can you imagine what could happen if 20,000 people had what Penny is giving to that particular principal? Because the reality is that none of our school principals, or most of our school principals, were not prepared for the management and leadership part of their task. They may be great teachers, but they were never prepared for the leadership piece. And that's what those of us who have been privileged enough to be at universities like Stellenbosch, have a responsibility to give back.
My name is Carl. as he mentioned, and I'm one of the co-founders of Yoko. Yoko is a young company that was co-founded in 2013 and launched in 2015. So we haven't been around that long. So Yoko is a payments company at its core. It's a point-of-sale payments company, so we allow small businesses to accept card payments at the point of sale in ways that they probably couldn't have accepted before because it was either too expensive or too lengthy a process in order to get access to those card payments. So we're very much in the expanding access to card payments. One thing to really to take from this is you have a very good cross-section of the SME economy in South Africa. We process over a billion and 300 rands every year across multiple industries. And I think one thing I noticed firsthand myself is this quarter is that these are really tough economic times. Our top 100 merchants out of the 10,000 are this month processing 50% what they were processing 3 months ago. But I'm going to try not to be grim and rather focus on what can be done positively through entrepreneurship. 6 months into my arrival here, we started Yoko. This came after a number of other business models that we had tried out. In short, what we noticed when we first started Yoko was that in South Africa, there were a lot of cards in the market. So 75% of adults have cards, and this is across the economy. So all LSMs, and because not just banks issue cards, but on the merchant side, so on the business side, only 300,000 merchants out of approximately 5 million, if you include informal, accepted cards. So there was this massive gap. And in short, it was purely there wasn't enough incentive, right, for the large banks to actually expand the market into SMEs. And SMEs, in many ways, are in a vicious cycle where they're expensive to serve because you probably want to serve a good deal amount of them in order to be profitable as a business, if you want to provide services to SMEs. But reaching them is expensive. At least it has been until the cloud era, where you can actually reach them via mobile and software and all of that. At the same time, there was a technology, right, that was really expensive and needed to be purchased or rented out. So we found a new technology. We also realized that we had a very good opportunity to almost redesign how we acquire SMEs. So we started going to the different banks, and obviously none of them wanted to speak to us because we didn't come from the payment space. So the odds were stacked against us, but we were a team of 4, and I think that by getting to know each other well and also having the right skill set, we built a lot of resilience inside the team. So we had a very low center of gravity. So we got told no and rejected by all the banks except for one, which we ended up going with, but they had never actually worked with a startup. And in the history of South Africa, no startup had ever gotten the license that we got in order to offer the service that we wanted to offer. So we dedicated an entire year to do this. That year, I think, defined who we are as a business, because most people wouldn't have gone through that year. You spend, and this is something I think that in South Africa is key, is that most people don't launch themselves into a single project as entrepreneurs. They typically have 3 or 4 things, or they have a job and then they have entrepreneurship on the side, right? I don't think that's the way to build a productive entrepreneurship ecosystem. So after we launched in 2000, after we eventually got the license from the bank in 2013, and when we did, that triggered our first fundraise. We raised money from a group of angel investors, and then we started building out the team. And during that year, 2014 and 2015, we watched all of the competitors launch before us. So we were literally the last into the market. But this is something that a lot of entrepreneurs get wrong, which is that being first to market is actually not an advantage all of the time, right? What you actually want to strive for is being last in market. And what that means is that you want to be the last remaining. So it's really about not being too early that other competitors, future competitors can do better than you and eat you, but also not being too late that the market is closed off. And that was exactly where we were. So we had learned a bunch of things from our competitors, and we improved on those, and then eventually launched, focusing on the fundamentals and being very customer-centric. So another part of building a resilient organization is about being extremely customer-centric, because you have to return to your mission whenever things get difficult or things get tough, and your mission should always be about the customer.